السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, continuing on with the Seerah of the noble Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have talked about the Battle of Badr, which is one of the main signposts of the biography of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the effects and the consequences of that, and which means we are in the third year. We are in the third year of Hijrah, and in this same year, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he got married to Hafsa bint Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhum. He got married to Hafsa, the daughter of Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with them. And we discussed that story in brief and the lessons we learned from that. Now, that was in Sha'ban of the third year. Okay, Sha'ban of the third year. And then of course came Ramadan. And in the month of Ramadan, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he got married to Zainab bint Khuzaymah radiallahu anha. Zainab bint Khuzaymah. And Zainab bint Khuzaymah radiallahu anha, she used to be known as Ummul Masakin. She used to be known as Ummul Masakin, the mother of the poor ones, because she used to take care and feed the poor people a lot. And Zainab is the sister of Maymuna. Maymuna, the wife of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they're sisters by mother, so they share the same mom. They shared the same mom. Now Zainab used to be married to Tufail ibn al-Harith, who divorced her, and then she was married to Ubayd ibn al-Harith, who was killed in the Battle of Badr. Ubayd ibn al-Harith, the cousin of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam proposed to her, and she accepted, obviously. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam married her in the Ramadan, the month of Ramadan of the third year. Okay, Zainab bint Khuzaymah. But she only stayed 3 months, and then she passed away. She stayed 3 months with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then she passed away. So in Rabi'ul Akhir, around 3 months, they said 3-4 months. So she is one of those wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who passed away while he was alive. Okay, Zainab bint Khuzaymah radiyallahu anha, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed on her, the janazah, and she was buried in Al-Baqi', the graveyard of Al-Baqi'. Now, this is exactly, as you know, 1 year from the Battle of Badr, the great Battle of Badr. Yawm al-Furqan, as Allah called it. That Battle of Badr was in Ramadan of the second year. Now we are in Ramadan of the third year. The Quraish of Mecca, as we know, they had been defeated, a huge defeat, which was unexpected. They never thought that this small group of what they used to call rebels and renegades, the Muslims, would actually come to be strong enough, let alone to defeat them, just to fight them, right? But the Muslims, they became strong enough in Medina, and we know what happened in Badr. And the Muslims won. The Quraysh, they were filled with anger. They wanted revenge. because they could not believe that a small number of people like the Muslims could defeat them. If you remember Badr, there were 1,000 people, while the Muslims were only around 319. And the Muslims only had 2 horses. Well, they had more than 100, almost 100, if not 70 or 80, around there. So number 1, they wanted revenge. Number 2, the Quraish of Makkah wanted to reinstate their position among the tribes, among the people of Arabia, because now their status had fallen. They had been defeated by a small number of people who they used to call as nobodies. So they wanted to reinstate their status. And number 3, now their source of livelihood, which was the trade routes, especially to Sham, رحلة الشتاء والصيف, the caravans of trade in the summer and the winter, they were not safe, especially the one to Sham, like we said. It is not safe. Why? Because they have to pass by close to Medina. And now Medina and its environs is under the command and control and power and authority of the Muslims. So if it means they cannot do trade, it actually means they are going to go bankrupt, they're going to die. So these 3 main reasons led to the next great event, which is the Battle of Uhud. Okay, I want you to repeat. What are the 3 reasons? What is number 1? What is the first reason they are going about to fight the Battle of Uhud? Bismillah. Because they want revenge. Very good, for Badr. Number 2? Because they're going to go bankrupt. Before that was number 3. What was number 2? To reinstate their position, their status among the Arabs, to show they're still strong. And then number 3 is the source of livelihood, for the security of the caravans. Okay? For the security of the caravans. This is too low. I have to scream. Can you put this up? Please. For the security of the caravans. These are 3 reasons that now we're going to go into the Battle of Uhud. Okay, the Battle of Uhud. And as you're going to see, the Battle of Uhud is one of the great events. Now this happened in the next month after Ramadan is the month of Shawwal. Okay, in the month of Shawwal, more specifically the middle of the month of Shawwal, the Quraish in Makkah, and they were led by Safwan ibn Umayyah, who we mentioned before, and Abu Sufyan and Ikrimah ibn Abu Jahl. They wanted revenge. So they went to their people in Makkah and they said, that trade caravan, remember that caravan which the Muslims had gone after, which was saved. That caravan, which was, by the way, 1,000 camels. That's a lot of camels. Meaning 1,000 camels carrying gold and silver and food, whatever they were carrying. That's like 1,000 trucks. So it was a huge caravan, okay, which constituted almost 50,000 dinars of gold. They said this caravan, nobody will touch it, meaning nobody will take his profits or her profits. What they used to do, the people of Makkah, all of them will invest, and then they go and do trade in Sham, and then they bring back the profits. So they said nobody will touch anything. And everything from this caravan will go into the army to prepare the army so we can get revenge. And all of them agreed to that. Okay? All of them agreed to that. The month of Shawwal of the 3rd year. Now the finances being there, they started to incite the people towards going to fight. They themselves, they want to fight, they have reasons. We just mentioned 3 reasons. Now they went about inciting the other Arab tribes outside of Makkah to join them. The tribes were still worshipping idols. And there's no better way, we mentioned this last time, in Arabia, today you want to start a revolution, You go to social media. Those days, you want to start a revolution, you want to move the people, you use what? Poetry. You use poetry. Okay? So they started with their poetry, and they got two people specifically. One of them is someone who mentioned before, and I want you to remember his name. His name is Abu Azza al-Jumahi. Abu Azza al-Jumahi, if you remember, he was the man, he fought in Badr with the mushrikun, and he was taken as a captive, as a prisoner of war. But then he said to the Prophet ﷺ, I'm so poor, I don't have any wealth to ransom myself, and I have young girls, daughters, they have nobody. So the Prophet ﷺ let him go on the condition that he will not fight the Muslims again or incite the people to fight the Muslims with his poetry. So he was let free. So Safwan ibn Umayyah, he went to him and said to him, Ya Aba Azza, innaka mru'un sha'ir, fa'inna bilisanik. You are a well-known poet, you should help us with your tongue, meaning with your poetry, to incite the other Arabs to join us to fight the Muslims. And obviously he said, no, I cannot do that, because I promised Muhammad, he gave me my freedom, that I'm not going to fight him or incite violence against him. But they continued pleading with him until Safwan ibn Umayyah said to him what? He said, I promise you, if you come back, I will make you one of the richest Arabs. And he was one of the poorest people. And if you are to be killed, then your daughters, they will be with my daughters. In terms of happiness, in terms of sadness. When he said this miskin, he agreed. So he started inciting the people against the Muslims. He started inciting the people against the Muslims with his poetry. Okay? And the other poet, his name was Hubayra ibn Abi Wahab. Hubayra ibn Abi Wahab, they incited the people of Kinana and the people of Qarra, who are all Arab tribes outside of Mecca. And also in preparation of this army, they got one other weapon, which they did not have before. And this was through Jubair ibn Mut'im. Now Jubair ibn Mut'im, of course, as we're going to see, is going to become Muslim after. Even those three leaders we just mentioned, by the way. These leaders of Kufr at this time, preparing to fight the Muslims. Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, Abu Sufyan, and Safwan ibn Umayyah, they're going to become Muslims. But as for now, they're not Muslims. Jubair ibn Mut'im, he found another weapon because of his revenge. He had a slave who's from Abyssinia. His name is Wahshiyu. Okay? And this guy Wahshiyu, he was well known, an expert in shooting the javelin or the spear. He was an expert in throwing the spear. He was known for that. So Jubair ibn Mut'im said to him, listen, I want you to specifically go out with us to fight that you kill Hamza radiallahu anhu. Why? Because Hamza killed my uncle, Al-Mut'im ibn Adi, in Badr. So I want you to kill Muhammad's uncle, just like his uncle killed my uncle. He said, if you kill him, you'll become free. Now, of course, that's a big thing for a slave. Just do one thing and you become free. And Wahshi, he agreed. Okay? They started preparing the army. As you see, they had a lot of wealth. So they put together with those Arab tribes from outside of Mecca, an army of 3,000 men. So 3 times what they had last year, imagine. 3,000 men from 1,000 men. And they had with them 3,000 camels. So it was like everyone had a camel with him. Nobody was walking. And they had 200 horses. We talked about the importance of the horse. The horse is like the jet. It's like you and having an army today and having fighter jets. Okay? They had 200 horses. Okay? And they had 700 men who are wearing the armor, body armor. They call it coat of mail in proper English, Old English. You call it body armor. So they were a very strongly prepared army. And the army in general was under the command of Abu Sufyan. Okay? It was under Abu Sufyan. And the horsemen, the cavalry, they were under Khalid bin Walid, after he'll become a Muslim, and his assistant was Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl. And the flag bearers, the standard bearers, were Banu Abdiddar as usual. Now I'm sure you watch TV. If you don't take it offensively. I'm sure you watch TV though. If you watch people fighting before, when they reconstruct wars of the past, every army is carrying a banner, a flag, a standard we call it, which represents them. That used to be the custom before. Okay? And that banner is very important. Because for them, as long as the banner is standing, we are still fighting. If it falls, it means we are defeated. So the carriers of the banners of the Quraish were the tribe of Abduddar. And this was the task they were given when Abd Manaf, the great grandfather of the Prophet ﷺ, divided the tasks. The tribe of so-and-so, your duty is to feed the guests of the haram. The tribe of so-and-so, your duty is to Zamzam. The tribe of so-and-so, your duty is to take care of the Kaaba. And the tribe of so-and-so, Banu Abdiddar, their duty was to carry the banner during war. Okay? Banu Abdiddar. So this was the preparation of the Meccan army. Added to that, they decided to take the women with them. So Abu Sufyan, he took his wife Hind bint Utbah, and Ikrimah ibn Abi Jahl, he took his wife Hakim, and the others. And the point behind this was that the women are going to incite the men and make them remember their fathers and their uncles and their brothers who were killed in Badr. And the women are going to incite the men and encourage the men to fight for their sake. Like, we are here, your women, protect us. Do you get it? So even they took women, their job was to get them drunk and to cry, to incite them. And they set out towards Medina. They set out towards Medina. While they set out, Al-Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib, the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he wrote a letter and he gave it to someone to deliver it to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, informing him of the army of the Quraish. They are coming out to meet you, and they have an army of 3,000 men, 200 horses, 700 armored men under Abu Sufyan, and the horsemen are under Khalid bin Walid and Ikrimah bin Abi Jahl. Why did Al-Abbas do that? We have seen through this history or Seerah. Al-Abbas, he used to love his nephew, the Prophet ﷺ. Even though he was not Muslim yet, he used to defend him. Okay? And we remember that in Badr, he went out to fight in Badr because he was forced to. So he wrote this letter and got it delivered to the Prophet ﷺ, express post. So the Prophet ﷺ received the news in 3 days. When he received the news, this was the Thursday now. Thursday. Okay? When the Prophet ﷺ, he received the news, he called for a state of emergency. We have to defend Medina because they are coming with an army of 3,000 men. Okay? So they prepared to defend Medina. And a group of people would always be with the Prophet ﷺ, like Sa'd bin Mu'adh, Usayd bin Khudayr, Sa'd bin Ubadah. They personally defended the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The next morning, when the Prophet ﷺ he woke up, the Prophet had sent spies to go and spy about the army. Go and look. Okay, this army, how are they coming? What do they have and what not? Reconnaissance, as we call it. Gathering of information about your enemy. So they went out, the two young men, Anas and Mu'annis, the sons of Al-Durafayani, and they came back with the news. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he also sent Al-Hubab ibn al-Mundhir radiallahu anhu, and he came back and explained the army in detail. 3,000 men under Abu Sufyan, with Khalid with the horsemen, 200 horsemen, to the end. The Prophet ﷺ, when he woke up on a Friday now, after he prayed Fajr, I mentioned this before, it used to be some of his custom, the Prophet ﷺ would inform his companions of the dream he saw. Or he would ask them, after prayer, after you do the dhikr, he'll ask them, who saw a dream? And he'd interpret the dream for them. Okay? And the importance of dreams and how you interpret and whatnot, that is for another discussion. We're going to discuss that inshallah. So the Prophet ﷺ, he told them, Inni qad ra'aytu ru'ya. I saw a dream. I saw a dream. Wallahu khayran. And by Allah, I hope this dream is good. And the summary of the dream, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Ra'aytu baqaran tudhbah. I saw a cow being slaughtered. وَرَأَيْتُ فِي ذُبَابِ سَيْفِي وَفِي رِوَايَةِ ذِي الْفِقَارِ. And I saw in this sword of mine, the sword called Dhul Fiqar, I saw that there's thulma. The sword was broken. And then I saw also وَرَأَيْتُنِي أو رَأَيْتُ أَنِّي أَدْخَلْتُ يَدِي فِي دِرْعٍ حَصِينٍ. And I saw myself, I was in a well-protected body armor. How many things did you see? 3. So then he said, as for the cow being slaughtered, I believe is that some of my friends, my companions, ashab, they're going to be killed. Okay? As for the sword being broken, he said, I interpret that, because they asked him, فَمَا أَوَّلْتَهُ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, how did you interpret this dream? He said, as for the sword, my sword being broken, then is someone from my family, he's going to die. And as for the body armor which I saw, which was well defended, well guarded, and I'm inside it, that is Medina, this city of Medina. So as long as we stay in Medina, we are safe. So I believe, now he says to them, he says, I believe we should defend Medina, the city, and let them come and attack us in the city. That way, we can fight back well enough strategically. And also the women can help us. And the young boys, they can go on top of the houses and throw stones at them. And we'll defeat them. Okay? When he said that, most of the shuyukh, the elderly ones and the wise ones, they agreed. They said, this is a very good opinion. Abu Bakr, Umar, and the rest. And also one of those who agreed was Abdullah bin Ubay bin Salul, the leader of the hypocrites. And he agreed not because, number one, it was a good strategy. Because remember, the Muslims are very few. They can't go fight an army of 3,000 people with 200 horses. So them staying back in Medina and fighting back is better. But also, of course, being the leader of the hypocrites, he was a Jabban, he was a coward. He agreed to it because he was a coward. But the shabab from the young people, from the Sahaba, from the companions, they said, no, Messenger of Allah. For 2 reasons. They said before Islam, in Jahiliyyah, no one would ever think to come and attack us in Medina. Why should they attack us now while we are Muslims? We're stronger now. And the second reason, because most of them missed Badr. So they wanted a chance to go out and fight. They wanted a chance to go out and fight. And I don't want to say sadly, but by the qadr of Allah, this was the opinion of the majority. So when they said that, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Sha'nukum idhan." I agree to that. The hours passed, of course it's Friday. So they went for Jum'ah, khutbah. The Prophet ﷺ, he gave the khutbah. He encouraged them to fight for Allah's sake and the great reward for those who fight for Allah's religion to the end. When he finished his khutbah, the Prophet ﷺ, he entered his house and he started preparing for war. He was putting on his body armor. And in that battle, as has come in many hadith, the Prophet ﷺ, he wore two of them. Two body armors, one on top of another. Now you have to understand this. Again, I'm sure you've seen this on TV. Body armor is made of what usually? Either very thick leather, or it's metal. So in proper English, it's called a coat of mail. Mail is steel or iron. That is heavy. That is like 20, 30, 40 kilograms. For someone to wear twice that person has to be very, 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 very strong. And that shows you how strong the Prophet ﷺ used to be. So he wore twice. While he was doing that, because they saw him right after the khutbah, he went inside and was preparing. They came back and they talked to the shuyukh, Sa'd bin Mu'adh and the rest, Sa'd bin Ubadah. And they said, لَعَلَّنَا استكرهنا Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Maybe we forced the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to an opinion he didn't want. He wanted to sit back and fight in Medina. And we were very pushing that we should go out and fight. So they regretted it somehow. So when the Prophet ﷺ came out, Sa'd bin Mu'adh, he spoke as a leader. He said, "Oh Messenger of Allah, it's as if, we took you to the opinion which you didn't want. So maybe we should sit back and follow your opinion, your strategy. We should sit back and wait for them and fight in Medina." But the Prophet ﷺ, he said what? He said, "Ma yanbaghi li nabiyyin." It is not proper for any prophet. إِذَا لَبِسَ لَأْمَتَهُ. Once he wears his coat of mail, his body armor, once he puts on his weapons, أَن يَضَعَهَا حَتَّى يَحْكُمَ اللَّهُ بَيْنَهُ وَبَيْنَ عَدُوِّهِ. That he should take it off until he goes out and fights and Allah judges between him and his enemies. It is not proper for a prophet, once he gets dressed for war, to take it out. No, until he goes out and fight. So obviously now they had no choice. And we'll discuss, guys, we'll come back and discuss the benefits of every point of this story. But here also, you see how the Prophet ﷺ, he consulted them. That's one point, we'll come back to it. Should we go out and fight? Should we defend Medina? But next, after the discussion, the consultation, the shura, he as the leader, he takes the decision. He said, "No, we're going out." So they all prepared to go out to fight. And they managed to put together an army of 1,000 men. Against how many? 3,000. And they only had 2 horses. Against how many? 200 horses. Yes. They only had 2 horses against 200 horses. It shows you how they were greatly outnumbered and greatly overpowered in terms of armory, in terms of weapons. Tayyib? So, the Prophet ﷺ, he gave the flag of the Aus, the tribe of Aus from the Ansar, he gave it to Usayd bin Khudayr radiallahu anhu. And the banner of the Khazraj, he gave it to Al-Hubbab bin al-Mundhir radiallahu anhu. And then the banner of the Muhajirun, those who came from Mecca, he gave it to Mus'ab ibn Umayr radiallahu anhu. And they went out. And before going out, as you know, as is the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he had to put someone in charge of Medina. So he put, once again, Abdullah ibn Maktum, the blind man of Abasa wa Tawalla. And we talked about this a few times, how him being blind does not take away anything in Islam. In Islam, it's not your skin, it's not your race, it's not how you look. It's about your merit. He was a blind man, but imagine the Prophet ﷺ is going out. He is in charge of Medina to lead the people in Salah. Okay? So the Prophet ﷺ, he set out, and in front of him, while going out to fight, was Sa'ad bin Mu'adh and Sa'ad bin Ubadah, the two chiefs of the Ansar. And both of them were wearing coat of mail, body armor. This is significant because it's going to come back for us. Now, someone who was not wearing body armor that day was Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib. He went out as he is to fight. Great warrior, there's nothing to fear. Now, the Prophet ﷺ, he set out heading to Uhud because they heard that the Quraish of Mecca, they have camped at Uhud. Okay? And in fact, they camped at a place which was a farm of one of the Muslims. But because they came, imagine, with 3,000 camels, 200 horses, their animals had destroyed the whole farm. Now, today, in today's world, for those of you who have gone to Medina and Uhud is same thing. It's like you, hunt club, and I don't know. Yes. It's around 5 kilometers, simply. 5 kilometers for us is nothing. In your car, that's 7 minutes drive. It's from your home to here, probably, even less. But then, when you had to travel with camel and horse, it was a bit of a distance. So the Prophet ﷺ, he set out to meet them. While setting out to meet them, the Prophet ﷺ, he looked at his 1,000 men, and he saw some young people. And all those who were young, under the age of 14, they were returned. They were told, no, you can't go to fight. And some of them were crying, which tells you a lot. Young men at the age of 14 were out there ready to go fight. They had to be turned back. Abdullah bin Umar is one of them, Usama bin Zayd, who later on are going to be the people who will carry forward Islam. But for now, no, you're too young. Not yet. But not the too young we use. Today we say to a 35-year-old man, oh, you're too young to lead this salah or this masjid. He has to have a cane until he can't walk and think properly. Then he becomes the leader of the masjid and a Muslim organization. 14, that's when they were returned. But even within those 14, there was a young boy called Rafi' ibn Khadij radiallahu anhu. Rafi', he was exempted. The Prophet ﷺ said, let Rafi' come. Why? Because he was an expert archer at shooting arrows. Today you can say he was a sniper. Thank you. He was an expert. So even though he was 14, the Prophet ﷺ said, let him come. When this happened, there's another Sahabi called Samura bin Jundub. You have heard of him. Hadith narrated by Samura bin Jundub after the Prophet ﷺ died. Samura bin Jundub was also 14. He said, Ya Rasulullah, if you let Rafi' go, I am stronger than him. Every time we wrestle, I beat him. The Prophet ﷺ says, that's so? He said, yes. So the Prophet ﷺ said, make space. Come and wrestle in front of me. Yes. The Prophet ﷺ himself used to wrestle with them. Not the wrestling of WWF, by the way. You don't live here today and go watch WWF. No, naked man on the screen. No. Wrestling, which is called, they call it today, Greco wrestling, something like that. Proper wrestling. There's no hitting the face. It's just wrestling. Overcoming and overpowering your competitor. They call it Greco wrestling. Yes, Musara'a. Not the wrestling which is acting and... No, not that one. So they wrestled. And when they wrestled, Samura, he defeated Rafi'. So the Prophet said, okay, you can come also. So these were the two young men allowed in that army. Now the Prophet ﷺ, he stopped and he prayed Maghrib and Isha, and he chose 50 men to defend him. Okay? Now, tomorrow morning now the Fajr of what? What day is it now? Saturday. Now, it is the day of the battle. The Prophet ﷺ stood up, they prayed Fajr, he told Bilal to call the Adhan and Iqamah, because they're outside. They prayed outside. And then again, he encouraged them, incited them, told them of the great reward of defending and serving Allah's religion. And then they started to set out and they walked. When they started at this point, this is when Abdullah ibn Ubay bin Salul, the leader of the hypocrites, he stood up and said to his people, his followers, he said, we should go back. You know why? Because he listened to the young people. He didn't listen to our opinion, our strategy of sitting back in Medina. So let him go and fight. And 300 people followed him. From an army of how many people? 1,000. That's 1/3 of the army. And 300 of them left. When they left, there was an old man. He was old. His name is Abdullah ibn Haram. Abdullah ibn Haram is the famous father of the famous Jabir ibn Abdullah. Jabir ibn Abdullah is number 6 or number 7 in terms of narrating so many hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. You have heard so many hadith narrated by Jabir. And when they say Jabir, is only Jabir ibn Abdullah. Okay? This old man, he went out and followed them. He said, what are you doing? At this moment, أذكركم الله, remind you of Allah, ألا تخذلوا قومكم ونبيكم عندما حضر من عدوهم. Do not disgrace your prophet and your people when there's an army of an enemy facing them right now. You're going back? And they said, no. You know, actually what? We don't think there's going to be fighting. They're just going to go there and they'll throw words at each other, they'll come back. There's no fighting. And thus they left, and he said to them, أَبْعَدَكُمُ اللَّهُ أَعْدَاءَ اللَّهِ. May Allah distance your enemies of Allah. فَسَيُغْنِ اللَّهُ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ عَنْكُمْ نَبِيَّهُ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم. Allah will suffice and take care of His Prophet, doesn't need you. When they left, there's a group of the Muslims who are not hypocrites who got affected by them and also say, you know what, maybe yes, an army of 3,000 people, 200 horses, we only have 2 horses. We're only now, look, we're not 1,000 anymore, we're what? We're 700 now. Maybe we should go also. And these 2 tribes are the tribes of Banu Salama and Banu Harith. Both of them from the people of Medina. They thought about it, they consulted each other, but then Allah saved them. Now guys, we have to know. We talked about this a few times. Where do we get the Seerah? The first source of the Seerah is what? The Quran. In fact, this battle of Uhud we're going to discuss today, there's more than 60 verses of the Quran. 60 ayat talking about this battle. Starting from this point and before. So when these hypocrites they left, That is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said about them, وَلْيَعْلَمَ الَّذِينَ نَافَقُوا. Surah Ali Imran, Surah Ali Imran, that's where Battle of Uhud is talked about. Okay? Allah said, so He can know those who are the hypocrites. وَقِيلَ لَهُمْ, it was said to them, تعالوا, come, قاتلوا في سبيل الله أو ادفعوا, fight for Allah's religion, or at least defend your fellow Muslims. قالوا, they said, giving their lame excuse, لو نعلم قتالا لاتبعناكم. If we knew there's fighting, we'd follow you, but there's no fighting. There's no fighting. يقولون بأفواههم ما ليس في قلوبهم. Allah says, they say by their tongues what's not in their hearts, which is what? They know there's going to be fighting. And number two, they say they're Muslim, but they're not Muslims in their heart. Wallahu a'lamu bima yaktumun. Allah, He knows what they're hiding. طيب. And Allah also said in the same surah, ما كان الله ليذر المؤمنين على ما أنتم عليه حتى يميز الخبيث من الطيب. It was not for Allah to leave you as you are until Allah distinguishes from the good ones from the bad ones. Now when these people left, the hypocrites, the believers argued between themselves. What are these people doing? They're leaving us to facing this huge army. What should we do? A group of them said we should fight them and punish them. A group of them said no, just leave them alone. And Allah revealed the verse saying, فَمَا لَكُمْ فِي الْمُنَافِقِينَ فِئَتَيْنِ وَاللَّهُ أَرْكَسَهُمْ بِمَا كَسَبُوا. Surah An-Nisa. What is with you Muslims that you are fighting yourselves about the hypocrites, while Allah has deemed them to doom because of what they do? Those hypocrites, leave them alone. You should not dispute because of them. While this was happening, like we said, the two tribes of Banu Salama and Banu Haritha, they were about to be affected by the hypocrites. They discussed, but then they say, you know what, we should not leave. And they are the ones Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِذْ هَمَّ الطَّائِفَتَانِ مِنْكُمْ أَن تَفْشَلَا. When there's two groups amongst you Muslims, they wanted to fail. وَاللَّهُ وَلِيُّهُمَا. But Allah is their caretaker. Allah is the caretaker. Jabir says, this verse was about us. Allah says we're about to fail. But Allah is not a bad verse for us, that Allah mentioned us like that. Why? Because Allah praised us. Allah said what? Wallahu waliyuhuma. So Allah is our caretaker. So they continued the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. While they were walking now to Uhud to meet the enemy, the tribe of Banu Qaynuqa', we discussed, one of the three tribes of the Jews of Medina. They came. And they came with a huge group. And the Prophet ﷺ asked, who are these people? They said, Banu Qaynuqa', they came to help us. And in fact, this is important, listen, they came with a great amount of weapons, because that is what they used to do, making weapons. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Banu Qaynuqa', by the way, are the people of Abdullah bin Salam. Abdullah bin Salam, who became Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ asked them, Aslamu, did they become Muslims? They said, no, we came just to fight with you. The Prophet ﷺ said, فَلْيَرْجِعُوا, let them return, فَإِنَّ لَا نَسْتَعِينُ بِالْمُشْرِكِينَ عَلَى الْمُشْرِكِينَ. We don't seek assistance from those who are not Muslim over those who are not Muslim. Which is a fiqh issue, by the way. We're not going to discuss today the issue of can a Muslim army seek assistance and help from a non-Muslim army to fight another non-Muslim army. It's a fiqh issue which requires discussion, is not for us. So the Prophet ﷺ sent them away. Even though, remember, they needed them. These were 200 men with a lot of weapons. Now they're just 700 going to face 3,000 men. What's the ratio, Abdullah? 700 fighting 3,000. That's one man for how many? At least one man of 4. Imagine yourself being set out to fight 4 men. And most of them are on a horse or a camel. You are walking. You have to imagine that. So you know the great sacrifice the companions they put for this religion. And the great trials and fear Allah put them into. Because some of us we don't. And we underestimate them. That is why you hear at the end that the Sahaba, they are the best people. And it's part of your Islamic creed. You can never say anything bad about any of them. Because they got that status for the effort they put in. Okay? But they continued on, 700 men. The Prophet ﷺ refused their help. Now, you have to understand something. I want you to look at that diagram there, that picture, which is also there. Now, you see these palm trees. You see the trees? You see the trees. Okay. On the left of the trees, the arrows on the left, it says Al-Mushrikun. This is where the Mushrikun are based. Okay? And then the arrows which are next to the other side, the right side, it says Al-Muslimun. That is where the Muslims were. But what do you see around? What do you see around? Rocks, mountains. That is the famous mountain of Uhud. So basically, guys, look, Uhud is like a horseshoe. It's semicircular, as we say. Okay? And the Mushrikun, they came on the only way which you can go to Uhud, which is actually the way onto Medina. So the Muslims, they had no way to go past them except a very narrow path which not everybody knew. So the Prophet ﷺ, he got the assistance of the Sahabi called Abu Hathma. And he passed through some rocks. That is why they circumvented the Mushrikun and they came behind them. So now the Muslims are on the right side. Behind them is Uhud. On their right side is Uhud. On their left side, that's why now you see this arrow, the blue arrow. There's a pathway, but that pathway in the middle, there's a small hill or a mountain. Hill, we say a hill. You see that hill? There's a small hill. Look, this is the hill. And there's a small pathway to come this side. Otherwise, there's no other way. It's mountains, mountains, mountains. Okay, there's this, all of it is mountain Uhud. At the back is all Mount Uhud. Look here. All of it is Mount Uhud. This is the way to Medina actually. The Mushrikun are here. So how will the Muslims come this way? They'll fight before even taking position. They're coming from Medina, remember? So they found a way through this side, small way. And they came behind this small hill. And now they're standing here, facing them. So the Muslims are actually facing Medina. Yes, they're actually facing Medina. Now this small hill, which has a pathway to come to the back of the Muslims, is very significant, which we're going to see. That's where the Prophet ﷺ will put the archers to throw arrows, so that the Mushrikun don't come around them. Okay? So this is how Uhud was set up. Now this small way they had to go through, the Muslims, it passed through a farm of one of the disbelievers who never liked Muslims. And this guy was blind. So when he knew of the Muslims passing by, he cursed them and he took some dust and said of Muhammad, if I knew where you are, I would have thrown it in your face. The Muslims wanted to deal with him, obviously. And the Prophet ﷺ said, leave him. He said, leave him. In a narration which is not authentic though, the Prophet ﷺ said, هذا أعمى البصر أعمى القلب. He is blind in his eyes, blind in his heart. Leave him. But the Muslims managed to pass through the small pathway, and now they are in that position. So the Muslims, behind them is Uhud, on the right side is Uhud, so they are covered. And the only way to them is through the left side, where there's this small hill, and there's a way, that blue arrow. See that blue arrow? Now we talked about this in Badr, guys. You guys, by the time we finish the Seerah, you'll know tactical and strategy of war. We talked about this in Badr. We said in war, It's very important if you want to win to flank your enemies. So you don't just fight directly, you go on the side, so you surround them. If you surround your enemy, khalas, they're done. So now the Muslims can never be surrounded. Their right side, look, is all Uhud. Right? Their back is all Uhud. Nobody can go past that. And the mushrikun are in front of them. So they can only come from the front or this left side. And this left side is that small hill. In that small hill, the Prophet ﷺ, he is going to put 50 archers. He put 50 archers, people who are experts in shooting the arrows. 50 is a big number. Imagine from a 700-man army. What percentage is that, Abdullah? Come on quickly. What's 50% of 700? You can use calculator. That's cheating though, but that's fine though. We are in Uhud. There's no calculators. Huh? 50 men out of 700 is what?
1 out of 14.
It's 1 out of 14. That's almost 8% of the army gone. He put 50 men. You know why? Because it's extremely important. Because any army, let alone an army under the expertise of this great warrior called Khalid bin Walid, any army will try to flank them. Look, we are 3,000, you are 700. If we flank you and come from the back and surround you, you're done. That is why these archers were very important. And the Prophet ﷺ said to them, La tabrahu, don't move. If you see us winning, don't move. If you see us losing, don't move. In fact, he gave them, the Prophet ﷺ, an example which is out of possibility. He said, وَإِنْ رَأَيْتُمْ تَخَطَّفُنَ الطَّيْرِ. If you saw those birds which came from the sky and they're picking us up, don't move. Can you imagine more than that? He said, don't move. Your job is to protect us and to make sure that army does not come. Okay? So this was the setup. Now, the Prophet ﷺ is going to prepare the army. We're going to see how he sets up the rest of the army. And the battle of Uhud is going to start. Okay? We're going to pray Maghrib and then come back. Bi-idhnillah. Insha'Allah. Now,